We are, of course, in a place where jazz is king. It's a musical form that's all about improvisation.
But I've heard that Beethoven and Mozart often improv'd their way through compositions before they wrote them down.
Well, the classical domain is where we turn for our first story about a pianist named Behzad Abduraimov. He comes from Uzbekistan, but has parked at Park University.
Yeah, except, of course, when he's crisscrossing the globe to dazzle audiences with his skills. Producer Ashley Holcroft has more on this world-class talent who has yet to turn 25.
Welcome to the office of Behzad Abduraimov. On this day in May of 2015, it's in the century-old Folly Theater, where he's practicing for his Kansas City solo debut. Weeks before, he was filling concert halls in Finland and Spain. And in less than a week, his workplace moves to Paris, then on to Copenhagen. His meteoric rise started after he won the London International Piano Competition in 2011. Behzad's musical journey has been guided by a series of teachers.
I was almost 6 years old when my mother started teaching me all the basics, rhythms, notes, etc. And then I think when I turned 6, she took me into my first piano teacher.
That was the late, legendary Tamara Popovic, who's credited with helping propel dozens of young pianists to the international stage. Next came Stanislav Yudenich, a fellow native of Uzbekistan, who won the prestigious Van Cliburn Piano Competition in 2001, where he caught the music world's attention, including critic Paul Horsley.
You could hear immediately that there was a very personal, very immediate style. It was almost rhetorical for me. It was almost as if he were speaking. He had studied with a broad range of teachers who had brought together the Russian school, the Germanic Austrian tradition, the Italian tradition, American Juilliard tradition.
So when Stanislav decided to eschew the concert circuit for the rewards of teaching, he opted to remain in Kansas City and sell the idea of building a world-class boutique music program to Park University. The International Center for Music, or ICM, was developed to offer elite instruction to promising young players. While giving a master class in Italy, Stanislav discovered Behzad.
I saw him first time, he was 15. He has everything. He's a very special talent. It was obvious from the beginning.
2. Now 3.
One of the most important values of him as a musician is very, very high tune sensitivity to the sound. He is also humble in what he does, in a good sense, I mean, how he treats the musical text.
I came to Kansas City being very young, only 16 years old. I didn't speak English. I was in discovery of an unknown future at that time. It can be kind of terrifying, but most importantly, I was surrounded by great people. They became part of my family.
Now Behzad is the first artist in residence at Park University, where he sets the bar and coaches ICM students on the rigors of professional life. Everything from nuancing a record deal to the necessity of practicing 4 to 6 hours a day, to the subtleties of interpreting a musical composition.
Very tricky moment when it shouldn't be too much yourself than the composer's intentions.
How do you deal with nerves on stage?
Well, first of all, you, of course, practice for many, many hours.
How much time do you spend on airplane?
I've counted once a year, it's most likely a month.
A month?
Yeah, on road or in the airplane or train.
But even after a critically acclaimed debut at Carnegie Hall and playing with symphonies and philharmonics across the globe, there's still one audience that causes him some trepidation.
You know, they say the most difficult place to play is home, and since Kansas City is my hometown now, it's a lot of pressure because at home, you know everybody and everyone knows you, and you have to go on stage and perform. And it's a lot of pressure in a good way, of course.
Hours before his Casey solo debut, Behzad is poring over the evening's repertoire, carefully plotting the delicate passages and masterfully harnessing the framework's torrid thunders.
Behzad practices in a very unique way. He will often do snippets of different pieces sort of in random order, and he will play a certain passage that he's concerned about. He'll come back to it, and then he'll go on to something else, and then come back to that passage.
He is a strong personality as well. He's very strong. He deals with the pressure, with huge pressure, beautifully.
He has this sound and this charisma, and it's hard to put a pinpoint. It's not just sound, it's not just hugeness of crass volume. It's really about a sort of an inner fire.
For me, the most intimate moment, when you play really quiet or soft or intimate places, and then there is not even a single sound or any cough or anything, and people are just so focused. You have them on hook, and it's fantastic. My humble desire is to bring all the great music of great composers to the audience and hopefully touch their souls.